You probably know someone, or you personally have experienced sexual abuse or sexual assault of some kind during your life. Today, we're going to explore the dark side of humanity, where trust is shattered under the covers of love. We're going to examine how to dissolve this fear, this anger, this mistrust, the shame, and the guilt using science and using ancient wisdom. So join me on this journey. This is a story that I have not shared with many. I've talked about it briefly, but I think it's time for me to share it more openly. I was 39 years old when I was attending a wedding up in Vermont, and a woman who did face reading pulled me aside about 2 o'clock in the morning and said, "There's something I need to talk to you about." And I was a bit confused. We've all been drinking, and I thought she was a bit drunk and she wanted to take me aside for who knows what. And I was a happily married man at the time. She took me aside and said, "This is serious and you may not believe what I'm about to tell you." And I said, "Okay, spit it out. Let me see what you have to say." And she said, "You were abused as a child." I frankly thought, yes, I had a difficult childhood in terms of financial stress and some domestic violence and anger and all those issues that were happening at our home. But I never thought ever that I was sexually abused. So time goes by, and about 6-8 months later, I am doing this lucid dreaming, which is bringing the images of the bathroom in my grandma's home. And this person is inviting me into the bathroom. And I went in, and I can see this bathroom, and I can see every aspect of it, where the water was, what the little seat on which I sat down felt like, and I remember the next thing that happened. And when I finally faced it, I didn't know what to do with it. Emotions of shame, guilt, confusion, blame, anger. Why me? Why did this have to come to my memory now? And I didn't tell anyone for a very long time. Finally, when I did talk to some people about it, I was asked to go seek help. And when I finally mustered up enough courage to talk to a therapist about it, this person said to me, "So what did you feel when that happened?" And I said, "I remember feeling good." And I couldn't control my emotions when I said that, because there's a lot of shame attached to it. And she said, "Arun, there is a lot of difference between physiology and psychology. You have nerve endings. Many women who are raped, they actually have an orgasm during the rape. That doesn't mean they're enjoying it. You were a child. What happened to you was wrong, and it created psychological scars that now live at your cellular level." And I know that. I read the book called The Body Keeps the Score, that recounts the journey of a child and others who suffer abuse and trauma, how it lives at the cellular level. So what I then found as I studied further is that I was not alone. And it was shocking to me how many people suffer this kind of trauma. And when you go to the website called Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network, or RAINN, R-A-I-N-N, you realize that every 73 seconds, someone is sexually abused in the US. Every 9 minutes, a child is abused in the US. That's 160 kids per day. That's 58,000 children, innocent souls being abused today. What's even more shocking is that 34% of this abuse takes place at the hands of family members, like was the case with me. 59% of the abuse takes place at the hands of acquaintances. That's 93% of abusers that know the abused. It is beyond comprehension. And it's not surprising or shocking that 90% of rape goes unreported. And about 77 to 82% or 88%, I forget the figure, of child abuse goes unreported. Why is that? Well, because there's issues around family and culture and shame and respect and thinking about the fear of retaliation and perhaps not getting justice and not having the faith in the justice system and how it's going to work and revealing your vulnerabilities. Perhaps it was your fault. Perhaps you invited this type of a trauma and you did this. So all kinds of issues come together to let this thing sit inside us, and a process called disassociation causes what happened in my case. Disassociation can happen while the abuse is taking place, where a child takes the mind to a place that is not connected to what's going on. I did that for 27 years. And it's not uncommon for people to block this bad memory of trauma to protect ourselves from it. It's the mind's way of protecting ourselves from it. So the question then is, the bigger question is, this is my story, but the narrative is the same, of pain and suffering and trauma that many of us have experienced. And the even bigger question is, what do you do about it? How do you move forward? How do you move past it? What I found is what I want to share with you, the sensibilities of turning abuse, a deeply negative and damaging experience, into something positive. And the way I wanted to do it was to face this concept of abuse. So I turned the word abuse into an acronym to find things that are positive in this damning word. And that's what I want to share with you now. So the A stands for acceptance. Acceptance and emotional awareness of what happened, what transpired, and looking at that event deeply and understanding how it affected you, and not running away from it. Letting it figure itself out where it sits in your body. For me, it sat in my heart. In fact, I developed something called supraventricular tachycardia. Doctors told me it was a physical disorder, and they told me not to drink coffee, not to have spices, and all the rest, not to trigger this SVT. My heart rate can go to 210, 220 beats a minute, and I had to be taken to the ER to get an injection to stop that from happening. And there was a cure called cardiac ablation that they prescribed, and I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And I was standing near a coffee shop in Costa Rica about a year ago, and we were talking about sexual abuse and child abuse, and it suddenly hit me that the first time this tachycardia occurred was when I was climbing the steps of my grandma's home, holding my little cousin, 2-year-old. And below that staircase was the bathroom in which I was raped. And I believe it happened the same day. And this SVT, the supraventricular tachycardia, is where my fear sat. And it triggered every time that memory or any other memory created similar fears, anxiety, and panic attacks. I'm happy to report I drink coffee, I eat a lot of spices, and I have not experienced tachycardia for a long period of time, especially since I started doing yoga and meditation about 12, 14 years ago. So, awareness and letting it sit where it needs to sit, but understanding how to process it is very important. The B is belief. Belief in the goodness and belief in a bigger power, belief in your own confidence, belief in your courage, belief in your own vulnerability that you can break through it and that you can find the path and the light to dissolve this fear. That belief has led many people to huge successes and even to their own enlightenment, just like the stories we all know. Buddha, Christ, Guru Nanak, and others. That belief is perhaps the biggest pillar of you having the courage to face this dastardly act that took place that destroyed your soul or created a scar on your soul. The U is understanding. Understanding leads to forgiveness. And I am going to read a passage from a book by Thich Nhat Hanh that I've read in other episodes. I love this passage. It's about forgiveness. It's about understanding of how understanding leads to forgiveness. So this book is one of my favorites called Living Buddha, Living Christ, and I'll read you this passage. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Everyone makes mistakes. If we are mindful, we see that some of our actions in the past have caused others to suffer, and some actions of others have made us suffer. We want to be forgiving. We want to begin anew. You, my brother or sister, have wronged me in the past. I now understand that it was because you were suffering and did not see clearly. I no longer feel anger toward you. You cannot force yourself to forgive. Only when you understand what has happened can you have compassion for the other person and forgive him or her. That kind of forgiveness is the fruit of awareness. When you're mindful, you can see the many causes that led the other person to make you suffer. And when you see this, forgiveness and release arise naturally. Putting the teachings of Jesus and the Buddha into practice is always helpful. So I found forgiveness for the person who abused me. He was a member of the family, but I believe he was covered in so much darkness that the only way he could find a glimmer of happiness was through sexual acts with children. As dark as they were, they gave him a glimmer of light. It's beyond me to understand how that can make a person happy, but that's what he was after. Just like all of us are after happiness. You know, drug addicts won't become drug addicts because they want to. They want to stop the noise in their head. They want peace, they want happiness. People who are angry, they're just trying to push away the cause that's disturbing their peace. So that understanding brings forgiveness, and forgiveness will bring immense peace and understanding. For me, that was the transformative process, forgiving this person, that he was seeking the same thing that I'm seeking, which is inner peace and happiness. The S is support. Support is really, really important, and support from people who will not judge you. Support from the bigger power that you may believe in. For me, the support came from God. I prayed and I made my God my de facto father after my father died. So all of the pain that I had to share with someone in the privacy that I didn't want to share with others because I had shame and guilt and all kinds of things attached to it, I would simply sit in prayer. And God never judged me. In your case, your friend may never judge you, your family member may never judge you, the support network you have may never judge you. That is critical in the recovery process. Whatever support that speaks to you, that aligns with you, seek it, get it. There is no shame in it. It will not minimize you, it will strengthen you. The E is to examine what really happened and examine it deeply, just like Thich Nhat Hanh says. And the way I did it was through reflections. Now, I reflected by reading books and writing in the books what I understood. You could use a journal to write your reflections, but write about positive things. Don't write about the negative experiences. Don't trigger your trauma. And I want to be clear about this session. This is not clinical practice to help you deal with trauma. You may need clinical help. You may need medications. This is just my sensibility that I'm talking about. So examining what happened and dealing with it for me was by reading books and finding the wisdom and writing down notes, which has now turned into this exercise of the open book journey. That's how I reflected. So examining what happened is really important. The plus part are 3 C's: compassion, courage, and connection. Compassion for the self and for the other, just like the passage that I read for you. Self-compassion is deeply important, and through that you'll find the courage. You'll find the courage to face these demons and dissolve them, like Gary Zukov talks about in his book, The Seed of the Soul, when he discusses fear. So helping dissolve it through vulnerability, through courage, is an important exercise, like Brené Brown talks about. Finding this feeling in you that you're worthy of belonging and love, and vulnerability can take you there. And finally, connection. Connection with yourself, but in my case, it was connection with something bigger than myself, which became nature, which became butterflies, which became the clouds, the ocean, the rivers, and of course, God. Whatever is bigger than yourself, connect with it, because it'll help you connect with yourself and your inner being. That has been my recipe for moving past my trauma and my sexual abuse. And I hope with this experience, I can leave you with some kernels that'll help you process your own trauma and your own fears. So before I give you the prompt like we do in all of these episodes, I want to remember Nelson Mandela's words that the human spirit may be overshadowed, but it cannot be extinguished. And his life serves as an example, a light for me to think about the adversities over years that he felt, and yet could find compassion and forgive and bring change that we all needed, that this world needed, and healing that this world needed. So there's amazing examples like that I derive inspiration from personally, and that helps me believe that not only is there hope, but that there is goodness in this world, and that the ills exist only as the opposite energy of goodness. They're both the same form of energy. One that is seeking happiness in a dark way, and the other that is seeking happiness with light. But both are essentially the same. And once I got to that understanding, I was able to forgive and move on. So the prompt is very straightforward. As always, it's written here on the screen, and you'll still see it after we are done. I am worthy of love and belonging. I will use the Abuse Plus model to move forward and heal. Thank you for being on this journey with me today. Thank you for joining us today. Before you go, I'd like to tell you about two important things. First, a little bit about Karuna, and second, how you can be part of this journey with us. At Karuna, our mission is threefold. First, to support and empower youth and women who have suffered unspeakable abuse, neglect, abandonment, trafficking, and all of the traumas that life brings their way, unfortunately. Second, to support early childhood education in disadvantaged communities to help break the cycle of vicious poverty and abuse. And third, to fund well-being research through our esteemed scientific advisory board in areas that are disadvantaged. You can join us in one of 5 ways. They are listed on our website. So subscribe to this channel and subscribe to this website. You may volunteer with us, you can contribute, you can sponsor, you can be part of this journey to unleash compassion and make this world a happier place. Thank you.